All right. The new and improved Wyoming SQT version 2 user manual. It has a shorter introduction section. So chapter 1 kind of lays out what was the first half of today. So some key components and considerations for how we develop the tool and for use of the tool. It also goes through the stream functions pyramid framework, like Will did in the first presentation, and then goes through different components of the SQT, including I should note the whole table of contents is clickable. So if you click it, it should take you to the correct spot. And if you're ever like, man, there was a really cool figure, like in this case, I was looking for figure 3, the user manual directory. If you click the figure, it'll take you to the user manual directory, which, lets you know, hey, for background information, read chapter 1. If you are using the SQT workbook, you're going to read chapter 2. If you're using the SIT workbook, then you can skip chapter 2 and go straight to chapter 3 for using the SIT workbook. Depending on your debit option, you may need to read chapter 4. If you are using the SQT workbook, you're definitely going to need to read chapter 4 because that one has all of the data collection and analysis for assessing parameters and calculating field values for each metric. And then the appendices, I'm excited about the appendices, but if you're looking for field data collection methods, field forms, those are in Appendix A. But I'll jump back up. So we've got chapter 2, and these 2 chapters are, they're redundant where the spreadsheets are redundant or the workbooks are redundant. So they have similar information and they are designed so that if you are using the quantification tool workbook, you do not need to read chapter 3. And if you're using the impact tool workbook, you do not need to read chapter 2. But they include instructions on how to use the workbook and how, like if it's giving you funny answers or if there's like scoring exceptions or all that's going on, like scoring is outlined in chapter 2, and how it performs the calculations. Chapter 4 is the money-making chapter, data collection and analysis. That's the fun one, right? Where you get to go out, you delineate your reaches, you determine stream types, you work with the core to determine the parameters and metrics that are applicable to your site, bankful identification and verification, and then it goes through each of the 4 functional categories and the flow alteration module. And then we've included examples. If you are familiar with the old version 1 manual, just to note that there was a chapter called Calculating Functional Lift. All that information, the useful information about monitoring, is still included, and it's up in chapter 2, and it's in 2.3c is the monitoring information. The last chapter in the version 1 manual was all about calculating functional loss, and all of that information is now in chapter 3, where you talk about the stream impact tool. So if you're looking for what are the priority categories or impact severity tiers, impact options, those are all described, defined, and they're examples in chapter 3. And then chapter 5, we have examples. So we have some hypothetical examples that have appeared in most, if not all, SQT manuals, the passive versus active restoration approaches. And then you guys are the first manual. You have a real project. So that Savory Creek project that we've been looking at aerials for is included as an example in this version of the manual. And it's a little bit of a not a misfit, but it was collected, like data were collected for version 1. So there are a couple things like just the updates that have gone on. We provided what we could to provide you with an example of how to do and present the data from an SQT assessment. Hang on. Appendices. Just to show you all of our wonderful appendices, because I'm quite proud of them and they're incredibly useful. Like as we have written more manuals, we've been able to provide more examples, more text, just added clarity. So for Appendix A, I noted before in my PowerPoint presentation that it is abbreviated from the previous version. So we have not reproduced the DEQ manual instructions. And we're going to jump to that one after I talk about the other manuals. Appendix B forms, it is clear which ones are required, so which ones you have to submit to the Corps to show them how you determined your field values, and which ones are provided are optional. So you can use at your convenience. You can also feel free to take them and rework them for your needs, or not use them at all and collect everything on a tablet. That's an option too. Appendix C is for your native fish species assemblage. Appendix D, Will had mentioned earlier, it has bankful verification examples. It has a lot of pictures, and it works through examples for the 3 different methods. So some of the figures and examples Will had in his presentation today. So if you want like a written version of that with a couple more examples in it, Appendix D. And that one was actually developed for the Colorado SQT checklist. So it is reproduced from there. And then Appendix E is the Savory Creek forms and workbook. So there is a workbook that is already populated with data that you can open up and check out. And I'm going to jump to Appendix A, but mostly as a way to get to the forms, because I do want to show you the forms after a little tour. I'm not going to read this table of contents for Appendix A, but just to show you that it is abbreviated from the previous version, and we have tried to provide you with the information needed. So it's a lot of focus on the rapid geomorphic survey methods and what is the difference between a rapid method and a detailed method, and provide data you need for multiple metrics. So how do we define and identify bed features? Like, what are we calling a riffle, and what the heck is a geomorphic pool? Like, those are answered in this appendix, and this is like necessary information for you to apply the SQT method out in the field. And that includes veg plot setup as well. So instead of being in the main text of the user manual, like how you set up veg plots is laid out in detail in this appendix. And then once you have the data, you could go back to go to the user manual part to calculate your field values. We have a list of other useful documents. So again, I said we didn't reproduce any of the DEQ guidance for this manual, but we do provide references and links where possible. So how do you do the Large Woody Debris Index? We've got links to the 2 resources available to download those. I think we didn't do it for the DEQ guides, just in case those are updated before we do another manual update. So there's a table of methods that are not provided, and data forms. Data forms. There are 6 required forms, and this is an update. It started in Colorado, and the forms are similar to, I think they've been slightly updated from Colorado, but not much. It's like little formatting updates between Wyoming and Colorado. But there are required forms that you have to provide with a SQT submittal, and there are 6 of them. So there's the parameter selection checklist that just says, hey, these are the assessments these are the parameters I'm going to assess. There's the project reach form. There's bankful verification. So to make sure that the process you follow to determine bankful is documented, there's a form that requires you to document it in the same place for every project. There are field value documentation forms, and these forms are really providing you a space. They are not field forms. Like, do not print them and take them out into the field to fill out. Like, they are very much like after you've collected the data, after you've done some post-processing of the data, these are where you tell the core or the regulator or the reviewer, how you communicate to other people, how you arrived at your field value that has gone into the SQT. So whether or not you used rapid survey methods or if you used detailed methods using like a GPS unit or standard survey methods, you're going to have different forms and data that comes out of the field. And I feel like I'm losing sense throughout the day, but it's okay. I will show you in Appendix E with the Savory Creek example. We've provided you, here's the parameter selection checklist for Savory Creek and the project reach form that documents part of the Bankful identification process for the field component of that process. Also concentrated flow points, armoring, side channels. And here's where you indicate whether you have what survey methods you've used, either rapid or detailed survey methods. Because if you did the rapid method, there's a rapid survey form that is optional. There is the possibility you've also done it on a tablet, so you don't have a hard copy form, and your post-processing is going to be done in the computer digitally. But if you did use our rapid survey form, we have an example of what that looks like fully completed, and these field values match the data entry in the SQT spreadsheet that was provided. And I'm going to pause and go slow here because I think this is super cool. This is the Colorado SQT checklist document. So for Savory Creek, we gave you a rapid survey example. And in the Colorado checklist document, Appendix 2 provides you with a detailed survey example. And it includes, so it's an example of a submittal package when you've used detailed surveying. So it provides, well, first of all, a great figure showing like all your different bed features, whether pools are significant or geomorphic. Longitudinal profile data in addition to plots. And the Colorado checklist appendix will walk through how we went from this data to field values and also provides those field value documentation forms that you have to fill out. It provides example data entry and comments of like, this is how we determine those values that went into that form. And everybody's like, wow, this is so cool. You guys gave us examples. Or I've lost internet connectivity and no one can hear me. That's all right. Let me go back to my list and see what else I want to show you guys, as I also show more of the field value documentation forms. Yeah, hey, I made it to the end of my list. That's pretty exciting. So I have open, and I didn't want to do a lot of data entry with all of you guys watching. But when you download the Appendix B forms, so there are printable versions in the PDF, like in the user manual PDF, but then there's also the Excel workbook that has each form as a separate worksheet within it. So you can toggle the parameters and metrics that were selected. So if I happen to do base flow dynamics at a site instead of Bankful flow dynamics, I can toggle those on and off. The rapid survey form is marked as optional. And I don't think Will had it in his presentation, so I will show you the Bankful verification form. This is the next one I'm going to work on getting an example for you guys to see how it would be filled out for an actual project. But the first part asks you, what are your Bankful riffle values? that you used in your calculation methods for various metrics within the SQT. So did you verify discharge using a stream gauge, or did you calibrate to a regional area? So you don't necessarily have to enter discharge if you did not use discharge as part of your bankful verification process. But if you did use it, what was that discharge value that was calculated? Or if you did the um, field verification or field identification and then verified using regional curves, you are probably using a cross-sectional area. And when you provide the width and mean depth here, those are used as denominators to different metrics within the SQT. So just having those documented, and this is incredibly important for monitoring because you need to make sure you're using the same bankful width and the same bankful mean depth so that when you're doing calculations, that normalizing value or the expected value just doesn't change between your monitoring events. So you have to document those, and those will stay the same throughout the project. And then if you did not field verify, like Will said, like that is the first thing. Like you need to go look for bankful features in the field. And if it was not possible, like you had that concrete channel, you can come in here and say concrete channel had no bankful indicators, but you have to document that field verification was not possible for that site. And then identify and explain how you verified it once it was in the field. Like what methods did you use to come to consensus or to decide on what your bankful value was? And this is only going to be filled out for the existing condition, and then for the proposed condition and for all monitoring conditions, like this spreadsheet needs to be handy so that everybody who is calculating values or doing an SQT assessment for that project, they're all working from the same bankful value. And the last ones in here. So let's see, we have the survey form, bankful verification. There's the riparian extent form so that you are documenting your riparian extent. And then the veg forms, which do work for the field if you wanted to print them and fill them out and then come back for post-processing. And then I believe the last ones are the field value documentation. So FVD is field value documentation. It was just too long to write in the worksheet title. But in here, you are going to, this is part of the, consider it documentation rather than like actually part of the data collection or the analysis step. Like these forms are like, once you're done and you've put all your values into your SQT and you're ready to send off your mitigation plan, like you are going to document how you got those values. So what was your topography data source when you're doing your lateral drainage area delineation? Also, what were you using to identify your land cover? Was it an aerial image from 2016 or did you use the National Land Cover data set? If you had concentrated flow points, take pictures of them to show what they look like, just document concentrated flow points and armoring. And if these are provided, maybe this is in the site photos of Appendix 4 of the mitigation plan. And it walks through every parameter and every metric that is in the SQT. So if you're not doing base flow dynamics, you could come in and hide the rows associated with the metrics that you are not assessing, the parameters that you are not assessing.